Diversity is critical and it's really important, and it's about giving everybody an equal opportunity to have a foot up in the technological industry. If you talk about tech or artificial intelligence, everyone sees the boy sitting in a dark room tapping away at code, but it's not the biggest part of it. You look at what our software engineers are doing and our computer scientists, they're actually engaging, they're talking, they're meeting with government, they're meeting with industry, they're finding out what people need and they're trying to find solutions to meet that. So it's not what the perception of it is at all. It's changing drastically every day, and we need all types to contribute to that, and that brings it back to that diversity. If we have one type of person creating everything, then we're leaving out 95% of the world.
You know, it's scary how powerful technology is and the technology sector has become and how much it takes all of our lives. And it's worrying how many of those who are running these companies and the workforces come from a very specific demographic of developer. And that is not representative of their users. It's not representative of the world.
A lot of these AIs are being written, prescribed and managed by male-dominated psyches. And so there's plenty of examples of AI misreading a situation because of an assumption made by a male programmer. That diversity of thought, diversity of capability, diversity of creativity and imagination, diversity of perspectives is going to come down a very, very linear path unless we kind of reset it. You know, and that's what the industrial era was. It was a bunch of, you know, white males effectively steering with pretty much the 20th century.
It's very different than it used to be. The old school comedy, you know, the IT crowd where it's like, you know, people typing on computers, computer says no, answering the phone, putting it down, have you turned it on, have you turned it off again? Well, that's not what it's about now. Users have become a lot more capable than that. And so there's a lot of really engaging roles in helping people get the most out of the software they're using. Every day I get to talk to my customers and potential customers, listening to their problems and then coming up with solutions. And for me, a motivation, there's many, but one of them is about finally solving something that seemed impossible to solve. And I don't think it's promoted in that way at all. And we just don't get very many females in Australia applying for you know, the traditional tech roles. So I think there's ways of telling the story about what's involved in the daily life of someone in the industry is probably something that can be done that can help.
And this is, I think, our opportunity right now, because I think AI is not ones and zeros. Like, it is truly a human practice. And I think this is our opportunity to kind of course correct, get more women interested in the field. And once we have equal interest, I have no doubt that we'll have equal levels of performance and equal levels of success.
Here's a real good opportunity from a diversity point of view to shift that over the next century or so.
The skill set required for careers in technology isn't gender specific. However, the tech industry remains male-dominated in Australia and across the world. Women make up approximately half of consumers. However, tech companies don't reflect this in the workforce that is designing these products. So what are the barriers? Why are there less women working in these fields? And what can we do to shift this?
When I was graduating from my undergrad, there was about 200 of us, and there was maybe 3 or 4 females in my entire faculty of 200 software engineers that were graduating. And I think potentially, you know, it has to, in my mind, it has to start before that with, you know, high school or parenting. You know, are girls being encouraged to go in different paths, or was it seen as not the right choice to do computer science? I'm not sure.
I think in technology, it really comes down to branding. So when I grew up, technology was, you know, my brother getting his Commodore 64 computer and us doing, you know, coding the little turtle to go in mazes. But that was very much, first of all, something that was given to my brother and not mine.
There's so many factors involved in this that we see in media, in movies, in TV. We see so many of the scientists and mathematicians and data analysts, and they're all male. It's a very common phenomenon. And if you ask children to draw a scientist, that's what they draw, a middle-aged white man in a lab coat. And not only that, is you're also seeing it from the parents and the teachers and their surrounding communities, that there is that ongoing narrative, particularly in Australia, where it is quite stereotyped, where girls go into these types of careers and boys go into these types of careers. And it's accepted for boys to be excited about computers and robots and maths, and they can be good at those things, but girls almost are frowned upon if they do decide to go ahead and pursue those. People will often dissuade them from pursuing it, saying, well, that's not very girly, is it?
I have had a dream since I was younger to be the first woman to Mars. If men can go to space, then we can go to space. So
I want to either become like a mad scientist or an astronomer or a paleontologist. I've kind of always wanted to clone a dinosaur, getting like DNA from a fossil, just like in Jurassic Park, and actually doing that, even though it's like basically impossible. Like, wow, that'd be amazing.
And potentially dangerous. Do we really want dinosaurs back?
If you look around you, there are literally thousands of programs that are aimed at supporting girls in STEM and supporting girls in tech and artificial intelligence and coding and robotics. You know, and when I started on this journey of looking at it, that's kind of where I was thinking. I was thinking, you know, we need these tech skills. Girls don't have them. Girls aren't interested. And then I thought, well, how can we make these relevant? And I thought, okay, there's a couple of issues here. One is that we tend to focus these programs too late. So children, or girls in particular, start to lose their confidence at age 8. And it decreases exponentially until they reach about the age of 14. And then they're about 30% less confidence than boys. So why? Like, what is that? Is that stereotyping? Is it because I want to do what my friends do? Is it the parental influence? Is it puberty? You know, there are so many factors that contribute to this that we really kind of need to unpick it and start working on it.
If I think about when I was in school, it was very much the techie world were males. So it wasn't until I started seeing that, you know, there is women in STEM, and if I can show that to the children, then that makes it a little bit more exciting and shows them that they can actually be part of this as well.
And so many times the younger girls are discouraged from going into STEM fields by the teachers who have these unconscious biases. They don't even realize that they're treating the boys differently from the girls. In the classroom, the examples that they use are tailored towards the men. And it happens all the way up through school. Even in college, when I was getting my degree in engineering, I was one of the only females in the classroom. And the kinds of examples that he used, the jokes that he would tell, all of the things were geared to the guys in the classroom. I just had to have the confidence within me to know that I belong here. And this is something that I'm going to do whether you want me here or not. And so that is a difficult thing for most women to have to deal with. And for them to have to fight every single step of the way and at every single stage of their career, many of them feel like it's not worth it for me to do all of that. I'll just go do something that's easier for me to deal with. Not me.
Throughout my career, I've worked in quite a number of jobs, and it's always been a male-dominated environment. I guess being aware that your team is five white guys trying to do machine learning, and then trying to say, hey, this is like we've got these algorithms that are representative and will be good for you. There's a common example of, you know, there's an algorithm released that was, I believe it was looking into whether a picture was a male or a female or something along those lines. It was labelled by a group of males, and it ended up just becoming a makeup detector, not necessarily a male or female detector, because the male mind was biased to say, oh yeah, lipstick, like female, and because they were going through thousands of images. So I think you end up with all these biases in data labelling and biases in interpreting results and stuff. Since I've been in positions of hiring as well, I've always tried, you know, sort of, you feel sometimes a bit guilty because you're like, oh, I really want to hire in, you know, some female staff to actually get the, I guess, diversity of input and ways of looking at the world in. You put up a job ad, and all that comes back are male applicants. And it's sort of, maybe not necessarily guilty, but as you say, it's sort of awkward to say, well, I actually just want to look for like 2 female machine learning engineers. I think that needs to be okay. I don't think it should be awkward. And I think that's because of the lack of representation in those courses all those years ago. And I guess the way that we fix that is to try and have courses and encourage through education and through just, I guess, awareness of saying, hey, if this is something that interests you, it doesn't have to be a man-only thing.
I got into tech, I started coding and did an internship at a development firm, and I was the only female on the whole floor. I was constantly being asked to pick up packages, and on my contract it said software engineer, so there was a little bit of a challenge there for me to understand kind of where I fit in. It never felt harsh, but it felt like a little bit alienating, I guess, more than anything. And then I got into design. I wonder whether partially what made me lean more towards design was the fact that there were more females and that people within design were a little bit more progressive around listening for the female voices, elevating them, and reinforcing that there's space in that industry. Whereas in engineering, it just felt like it was optimized for who was doing the best, and the best was measured against what had already happened, which was largely contributions from men.
To be honest, I think that I have a track record of mostly being in male-dominated industries or traditionally male-dominated industries. It started with, I was always a very serious athlete growing up, and actually my first job was in genetics research in a laboratory. When I think about then my career, I went off to be a management consultant, which is also a very male-dominated industry. And I think part of how I was successful was that, again, because I grew up in these male-dominated spaces, I fit in. And so I think in many ways, I think in the diversity and inclusion conversation, we talk about passing. I think in many ways, I passed. So I was definitely a woman, I was a female, but I was like, bro enough to fit in. And when I think about that, I think one, that was a privilege that I didn't realize I was exercising. I could talk to them about sports, I could, engage in the banter that is, more male. One, I didn't realize that I was exercising that privilege, but also I didn't realize that there were probably other women that I was working with who didn't engage in that way, that were disadvantaged. And when I reflect on it, I almost feel like I was somewhat complicit in maintaining that culture. Because I was not uncomfortable in it, I didn't call it out. And I think about that quite a bit. And now that I'm in technology, I run my own team, I think very seriously around how I get diverse and inclusive teams because I want the best results. I think about some of that privilege that I exercise and kind of took for granted, recognize that it's not the same for the types of people that I want to feel comfortable on my team, and I try and correct for that.
The Strong Women in Future Technologies, or SWIFT program, was developed to tackle low female representation in technology. The program acknowledges that whilst technical skills are important, we need to also work to capture children's imagination from their earliest years. The program works with students, parents and teachers to remove conscious and unconscious bias and stereotyping. It aims to empower girls with the confidence to try new things, make mistakes, explore their curiosities, and above all, have the ability to speak up and ask questions.
I thought, right, we've got to target earlier. So we've got to target earlier from a confidence point of view. We've got to target them before they get to subject selection. So if you're targeting year sort of 10s, 11s and 12s, they've made their subject selection, they might have lost their confidence and they're not going to have a lot of interest in that. The second thing I realised as a parent myself was that a lot of these programs are equipping girls with skills, but they're expecting them to fit into the existing status quo. So the world around them's not feeling any pressure to change. It's like, girls, you must fit in with this. This is what the world is going to look like and you have to fit in with that. So there was no impetus to change the world or environment around them. And and also thirdly, to set up support structures in place, like really good support structures. So that's why SWIFT targets girls aged 8 to 13, so we get them before their confidence starts dropping and well before they start making subject selections. We do workshops with their parents around what the opportunities and career pathways are, the study around that, their own unconscious biases and what sort of messaging they might be putting through at home and what these girls are picking up on, and then the teachers as well. So what happens in the classroom and the way in which these skills are taught and the enthusiasm that's used and perhaps more stereotyping that's happening, that needs to be addressed as well. So it's not just girls, learn how to code, off you go. It's girls, what skills do you need? Courage, resilience, all those kind of soft skills, creativity, curiosity. How do you form a network around you that's going to support you? And then you bring in the parents, you bring in the teachers, and we're also starting to work with young men as well, so around the same age group, and do a very similar workshop, talk about those 21st century skills, talk about the importance of diversity, highlight things that have happened where diversity, cultural, socioeconomic, gender diversity hasn't been considered and how badly that's turned out, what the value of that is. And then I'd like to integrate the groups and allow them both equally to practice with each other in a moderated environment. So we're teaching people to work together, not in segregated groups. That's so important.
I often think, because I'm a woman, I think about how I can empower my girls to maintain a strong voice. And so some of the things I do is sometimes I just have all female groups so that they're not, because I know what happens. So I put groups together and the boys do the stuff and they say, girls, you write it down. And so I sort of think, right, well, I'm just going to have all girls groups because then they can take the lead and, But something that was brought up there is, but if we do that, then the boys never work with the girls, seeing them as being able to do this. And so then we're not training our boys. It's as important to train our boys in acceptance of the girls' abilities in these subjects, in these areas, as it is to make sure that we empower our girls. Because if we don't do that, we still get to a point where the boys are decision makers and they're not seeing that girls can do it because they haven't had that experience. And that's really the schools have such an important role in trying to educate both sides and to empower both sides so that when we release them into the workforce, into further studies, that they have that grounding and that ability to look at things from other people's perspectives.
Our tech teacher isn't a male, and it doesn't stand out to us as you have to be a male to do technology. It can stand out to us as I can do technology as well because I've got people to look after too, including my teachers.
And then those 3 girls that went and did the SWIFT program, what was some of the feedback that came back from that?
They were so excited. When they came back to school, they were just thrilled about it. And I think in particular because women were running the program as well, so they got to see some things that they could go into and, talking with other girls their age that are excited about it. That was all very helpful and it was nothing but positive. So, it's helped spark a bit of interest in these fields as well.
In the group this morning, we showed an awesome video that was filmed by Microsoft, and it asked young girls about inventors, and they could all run off multiple inventors. And then they said, tell us about some female inventors. And these girls were like, and they couldn't list any female inventors. And then it goes on to show these really, really cool inventions by women, so windscreen wipers and circular buzzsaw and bulletproof material. And I asked these girls, what's the common thread here? What's the common theme? And they all sort of looked and they said, oh, well, it's really practical and it's, every day and it's functional. And they're absolutely right. I said, but what stands out for me is these things aren't what you would expect of a woman. It's not the, fashion. It's not a new lipstick. They're not necessarily inventing those things. They're inventing things that stand up in, some fairly heavy situations and that are used by everybody. And that video is really powerful because it shows that we're not male and female in technology. We all bring a very similar set of skills. We're just all different, that's all. And we bring different things to the table.
It is hard, and you do need a tough skin, and that's fine. But do it. Learn coding. It's really important. Build robots. It's really important.
With everything steering towards AI and machine learning and technology, you can find your passion and you can make it technological. So we don't call our, in Swift we don't say STEM, we've reframed that to be a career in curiosity. So what are you curious about? Everyone has some curiosity about something. What are you passionate about? Where do you want to go and why do you want to be there? Like, what can you contribute to the world? So if you can answer those 4 things and identify what they are, because everybody has them, and then say, well, you can do that in technology, you can do that in AI, you can change the world. You can build an app or a system or a program that's going to provide clean water, diagnose disease, you know, appealing to people's need to do something good. That's what it's about.
Join us in episode 6, where we look at women who are working in construction and agriculture, 2 industries that remain very male-centric but are proactively looking to shift this. We speak to a number of women and men who are working to change the gender imbalance in these fields. To stay connected and informed as we roll out this series, please like us on our Facebook page, and you can re-watch any episodes either via our website or on the Channel 44 website.